You might have a good tank, but over time it might need a little upgrade in one area, then a little in another, until the state is reached when it's completely different vehicle. Soviet T-34 medium tanks line has a lot of similar vehicles, but they either have penetration of less than 100mm, or in case of T-34 with 57mm gun, small shells with very little amount of explosives. T-34-85 with a D-5T gun is the first vehicle out of them all to get an 85mm cannon, which allows tank to combine both good penetration and outstanding post-penetration effects. To fit the gun, it also received a bigger and at the same time more protected turret, plus the maximum speed increase. Though you cannot keep upgrading the same vehicle endlessly, and the downsides of these upgrades eventually start to show up. And despite the upgrades really made vehicle more powerful, it lost its advantage in other areas. And these other areas were something that was making T-34 special. At first glance, if we look at the main difference from other T-34s, things might look bright. New turret offers more protection. The whole turret's front is at least 90mm thick. That's not enough to stop enemy shells, but as you would expect from Soviets, there are a lot of sharp angles, so any inaccuracies in enemy's aim will result in ricochet. But at the same time, it has a huge and for that reason easily noticeable weak spot: its very wide and tall turret ring. That will result in suffering. Despite turret is different, a lot of things are still the same. The space inside was used to fit a bigger gun, so the gun's depression has no improvements and stays the same -5 degrees. And turret's rotation is exactly like its predecessors. But the gun has its own issues. Bigger caliber is always an advantage, but it also takes more time to reload. And for some reason this tank is the only one of all researchable T-34s to have the longest reload of 8.3 seconds. In fact, it's so long that any ordinary medium or heavy tanks you will face will be able to reload faster. Of course, there is something good about cannon as well. After all, the main reason to upgrade all T-34s was to have a better gun. Penetration and explosive amount inside the shell definitely makes the vehicle more dangerous. It has an unusually large amount of TNT, 164 grams. Though in-game, the gun also results in a significant jump of battle rating, so if post-penetration effect is still great, the penetration itself is not very different from other tanks. That also means that your hull, which was very good at protecting you, now can be penetrated frontally, because you will face more powerful opponents. The same like previous vehicles' 45mm of armor under 60 degrees angle in front and slightly less angled on sides, still can ricochet. But if on previous vehicles Stalinium was doing everything for you, and you was free to carelessly drive around the battlefield looking for targets, now you will have to intentionally angle your hull to increase chance of ricochet or even hide the hull altogether. Against opponents with low penetration like Jumbo, armor will still work great, but there will be plenty of tanks that shoot shells that cannot be stopped by so thin armor plates. Since you cannot rely on the hull armor anymore, good positioning and hiding behind cover becomes a mandatory part of a gameplay, making it more different than what T-34s are known for. That leaves turret the only part of a tank that can keep up with battle rating and still offer some protection. And you would like to hide everything else. There is an additional reason to hide your hull. Since in all models there are driver and machine gunner sitting in hull, there is a good chance that tank won't be destroyed by enemy's shell that penetrated turret, especially for less damaging projectiles without high explosive filler. So by hiding hull, tank can survive more shots. If T-34 are known for their ricochets that gave them ability to play very aggressively because they can feel more or less safe when moving through open areas, this tank must play as any other ordinary medium tank by hiding its hull. That results in more defensive gameplay and puts you another step away from what people imagine when they hear about Soviet T-34. Maximum speed is 55 km per hour. That's an increase over previous models. But in practice, this vehicle will usually be slower. That's because bigger and heavier turret. Since overall tank's weight increased, that hurts tank maneuverability, and usually you will reach speeds of up to 40 km per hour, and bigger numbers can only be seen when moving downwards. It's opposite to previous tanks that could reach slightly more on even ground but less going downhill. Despite all these changes, I cannot say that a T-34 with less protection and less mobility is a bad tank. After all, it still keeps these properties to some degree, and over 9 kg APHE shell is not something every vehicle has, but it still makes it less unique compared to other medium tanks. In arcade, where hiding behind cover takes the vast majority of battle, it has an advantage because of damage. If all enemies can reach its turret, it's more difficult for tanks with low damage to kill opponents. Sometimes they need 2 or more shots, while this tank usually one-shots everything it penetrates. Plus the turret is more thicker, so whenever you hide behind rock you might not even feel that you have a weak hull, since it will be rarely exposed in arcade. Though while other tanks can play downhill, your small gun's depression will offer you less choice where you can hide. And bigger maximum speed that wasn't useful and realistic because engine power was limiting you anyway, here will make you fastest medium tank. It's quite fragile for arcade where most of the things can be done using heavy tanks, but still very playable. Overall, this modification makes the tank more effective at shooting others, but doesn't forgive your mistakes when others shoot at you. And the gameplay becomes similar to what you could experience with other medium tanks. T-34-85 with a D5 gun is a decent medium tank that has a name of T-34 but doesn't have its spirit.